I want everyone at Collision working on this, okay? I want the Great Fighter Dokkan, I want Dalton, I want Tim, everybody.
Are you nuts? Dokkan's got his last dream review to do, Dalton's doing a bikini contest skit, and Tim... Well, me and Tim aren't talking anymore. I think he's on crack. Besides, I've got more important things to do.
Look, Shades, this isn't just some itty-bitty little ghost problem, okay? I felt it. This thing is pissed.
Okay, calm down. Look, send me the footage, I'll have a look at it, and I'll get back to you later. Will that make you feel better?
Alright. Fine, I'll send it through.
Alright, good. Alright, I'll talk to you later. Jesus. Oh.
Hello and welcome to Oh the Horror. I'm Fedora, and probably about the late 80s to early 90s, toys like Cabbage Patch Kids and Baby Born were all the rage. But in 1988, a little horror movie came out which made people view these little plastic tykes in a whole new light. And this horror movie was called Child's Play. Coming out in 1988 and directed by Tom Holland, Child's Play told the story of a psychotic serial killer named Charles Lee Ray, played by Brad Dourif, who was gunned down in a police shootout, only to cheat death by transferring his soul into the body of a popular doll called The Good Guy, the current hottest toy on the market. This act causes him to be purchased as a birthday present for young Andy Barclay, where the horror begins, as Charles, also known as Chucky, begins his killing spree. And as much as Andy insists to his mother and the police that the killings are the work of Chucky, naturally, no one believes him. Chucky's objective in the movie is to get out of the doll's body before his soul cements itself inside. And the only way for him to do that is to swap bodies with the first person to discover his true identity. In this case, Andy. Due to its success, the film obviously inspired sequels, each getting less scary as they went on, and focusing more on slapstick humour and one-liners. Until the year 1998 arrived, and then the fourth entry to the Child's Play series was released under the name Bride of Chucky. So, let's have a look and see if they managed to butcher another great slasher. So, this movie begins on a dark, stormy night in the evidence depository of the horror world. No, I'm not kidding. They've got everything here. Michael and Jason's masks, Leatherface's chainsaw, and even Freddy's glove. Wow, the police that work there must have a lot of interesting stories to tell at dinner time. We then see this shady man of the law, who opens up this one particular locker and steals a plastic bag containing the remains of Chucky from the last movie. He then GTAs through the late night traffic until he arrives at this warehouse to wait for whomever it is who's paying him for the killer doll's corpse. Oh, damn it! Why did I think it was a good idea to hook up my taser to my radio? But he has more pressing issues at hand now, as his throat is suddenly slashed from behind by this pair of legs, who it turns out to be Jennifer Tilly. Well, whatever way you look at it, she's going to need one hell of a lawyer to get her out of this one. I hear Jim Carrey's free.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
So it turns out this is actually an old girlfriend of Chucky's named Tiffany, whom, despite seemingly knowing all about Chucky being a doll and about all of his voodoo magic, has never been mentioned at all before now. Anyway, she rebuilds Chucky via montage, and then we cut over to this phallus in a suit, paying a visit to the dad from the Problem Child movies.
Jane, David's here.
Well, I've been hearing good things about you, David. I understand you're off to Princeton next fall.
Yes, sir.
What are you going to study?
Theater arts?
But on an athletic scholarship, right? Playing hockey?
Figure skating.
Jane!
Oh! This is for you.
I love lilies.
Actually, it's an orchid. A Cymbidium orchid. You put it in a vase and drop an aspirin in it. It should last you the whole year. Or so I read.
But if there's one thing these kids should not do in this movie, it's dick around with little Ben. A fact which is doubly proven in a few minutes. In the meantime, we see that Jade here is actually screwing this guy in the back seat named Jesse. So, the Breakfast Club here are pulled over and breathalyzed by one of Little Ben's cops out to stop them from seeing each other, and then the man himself arrives to admire his handiwork.
Jade, when you're 18, you can go to hell for all I care, but until then, I'm stuck with you. And I'll be damned if I'm gonna let you embarrass me by ending up on Jerry Springer with some trailer trash lowlife.
You fuck!
But you won't. Not Jade, anyway, not anymore.
Back to Tiffany. And after a gag that was dated well before this movie came out, she begins the spell to resurrect Chucky.
Give me the power, I beg of you.
I am an award-winning actress. But the voodoo spell is cut slightly short when this Kiss Army reject shows up, who it seems is Tiffany's new boyfriend. And I can certainly see what she sees in him.
You know what the French call an orgasm? The little death. Come on, Tiffany. Let's die a little.
Great idea. Chucky? So, Kurt Cobain here gets butt smothered, and then Tiffany discovers that Chucky isn't really the man she fell in love with. Minus the fact, that he's a doll.
You mean you weren't gonna ask me to marry you?
What are you, fucking nuts?
L'amour.
So, due to his, being an arsehole, Tiffany locks Chucky up in a playpen. Insert your own Rugrats joke here. And decides to keep him as a pet. But it's alright. At least she gives him some toys, some crayons, some paper, and even a playmate.
With this ring, I thee wed. Oh, Chucky, she's beautiful.
Naturally pissed off about being reduced to this. Don't worry, Chuck, we all are. One night, while Tiffany's in the bath, Chucky breaks out of his cell and pushes the TV in there with her, frying her to a crisp. But that's not all. Just to add salt to the wound, he then transfers her soul into the body of the bride doll. Naturally, Tiffany's a little peeved.
You son of a bitch! What have you done to me?
Good! Kick each other's asses. Great idea. At least they're not doing something stupid like, making doll puns at each other.
You're mine now, doll.
I wouldn't marry you if you had the body of G.I. Joe.
Hey, Raggedy Ann, you looked in the mirror lately?
Barbie, eat your heart out.
I hate you. So now, since they're both trapped in doll bodies, Chucky informs Tiffany that the only way out is to travel to New Jersey, where his actual body is buried, to retrieve an amulet from his corpse that will allow them to transfer their souls into any human body. So, what, did you just forget about that in the earlier movies? After calling Jesse, who just so happens to live in the same trailer park as Tiffany, they manage to trick him into delivering them to New Jersey with the promise of a $1,000 reward. And since Jesse is both A, determined to escape Little Ben's wrath along with his beloved Jade, and B, a moron who thinks $1,000 will allow him to start a new life with her, he accepts, and picks up the two pint-sized psychos before arriving at Jade's house to start endlessly serenading her.
Jesse Warren will be home in
Jade,
if he catches you.
You know I never take you for granted.
Jesse.
You know, like if you'd cook, I'd do the dishes, right? Anything at all. You know that, right? I can put a deposit on an apartment. I'll get a job.
Being with you is like going to
I'll
a
help
place
put you
that
through
I've never
college.
been before.
I think I'm gonna throw up.
But their ride into the sunset is threatened when Little Ben arrives with intentions to frame Jesse for drug possession in order to keep them from running off together. Naturally, this also threatens Chucky and Tiffany's plans, so obviously he must be dealt with. But how, do you ask? Well, how about lining up some nails in front of the airbag and blowing it, driving them all into Little Ben's face? Well, points for originality.
Why does that look so familiar?
You're right, he does look just like Stephen from Hellraiser Revelations. So, after the two stash the body in a trunk, Jade and Jesse are none the wiser, as they pull out and head for New Jersey. Well, almost. Little Ben's pocket cop quickly arrives and stops them, but he's quickly and discreetly taken care of by Chucky. So if speeding away from the scene of the crime wasn't sus enough for the two lovebirds, it turns out that the news has caught wind of this, and the cops are now pinning every death in the movie so far on Jade and Jesse. So after a few miles of them accusing each other of the murders, they pull up at a church and get married. Well, I guess the mystery is a bit of a turn-on for them. Then we get some time with Tiffany and Chucky, just talking. And as strange as it sounds, it's actually a pretty nice scene. I mean, forget these two bland, boring as batshit losers. From here, you can't just help but kind of start rooting for Chucky and Tiffany to get back together. Oh, hey little Ben. So after that mess is dealt with, Jesse and Jade get some visitors in their hotel room.
Well, see, it's our wedding night as well, which is what makes this just so perfect. You know what they say, the more, the merrier.
Yeah, anyway, Tiffany doesn't approve, and as such, shatters the glass ceiling above their bed that night and slices them into ribbons. And apparently this really gets Chucky's motor going, and following the bloodshed, he proposes. Aww. Well, anyway. Someone had to write that, right? Someone had to sit down, get a piece of paper and write plastic doll sex scene. Nah. As completely bafflingly bizarre as this scene is, it's again played more for laughs than anything else. Oh, and speaking of laughs, here's a cleaning lady played by Sister Act's Kathy Najimy. Once again fleeing the murder scene, Jesse and Jade stumble into their friend David from earlier in the film, who, after finding Little Ben's body in the car, pulls a gun on the two. He flags over some cops, which prompts Chucky and Tiffany to pull their own guns, which they didn't have until now. So, after seeing this astonishing sight, David wanders over to the obvious green screen and is splattered by a truck.
That works too.
Now held at gunpoint, Jesse and Jade floor it.
So how did you end up like this?
Well, it's a long story.
It sure is.
In fact, if it was a movie, it would take 3 or 4 sequels just to do it justice.
Or bleed it for every dime you can get out of it, but, well, tomato, tomato. After ditching the van for a Winnebago, Chucky and Tiffany have reached the level of their relationship where they start, and God forgive me for saying it, baby talking.
Swedish meatballs like you, babe. Peachy.
Thanks, honey bun. I hope you left room for dessert.
You know it, Pookie.
Oh, God, this is even worse than the sex scene. I didn't say play it. Anyway, after Jesse recalls that Tiffany is an avid feminist, he comes up with a plan to turn them against each other, which, via telepathy, I guess, Jade instantly starts doing as well. And before you know it...
Here I am slaving away over a hot stove, making cookies, making Swedish meatballs, and for what? For a man who doesn't appreciate me! For a man who can't even wash one fucking dish! For a man who isn't even a man at my drift.
After the weirdest episode of Jerry Springer ever, which concludes with the Winnebago doing some explosive off-roading and Tiffany receiving a bit of a tan as a result, everyone arrives at the graveyard, where Chucky is finally able to reclaim the amulet and ties the two teens up to begin the soul transfer. But halfway through, the fried crispy Tiffany decides to stab Chucky in the spine. Okay, why did you do that?
Oh, Chucky, look at us. Don't you see? We belong dead.
Seriously? Not 5 minutes ago, you were reveling in how you were going to steal their bodies. Now all of a sudden it's, we belong dead? Is this because she watched that one scene from Bride of Frankenstein in the bath? You know, I wouldn't quote one of the greatest horror movies ever made in a movie that has this in it. So, obviously just as confused as the rest of us, Chucky attacks Tiffany, and the two start shovel fighting. Chucky finally delivers the killing blow to Tiffany, but before he's able to turn his attention back to the teens, he's whacked with a shovel into his own grave, and Jade unloads a clip into him, killing him also. So after the police arrive and just let Jesse and Jade walk off, this movie comes to a jump scare end, with this cop poking Tiffany's corpse through a little bit before she spontaneously gives birth, and the baby lunges at the cop's face. And that was Bride of Chucky. This movie is really dumb, but it does have some good points for certain people. The characters are all completely uninteresting, save of course for Chucky and Tiffany, who actually do have quite a few funny lines and have a story that, for the most part, you can root for. The plot is very inconsistent with the earlier films, and with itself at most points, and often serves to make a joke out of Chucky's character. Not as much as what they did to Freddy in his later films, but that's pretty obvious. But they do make it plain from the beginning of this film, especially with all the references to the earlier slasher films, that it's mainly played to be taken as parody. And if you look at it that way, it's not as bad as it could have been.
But what's that, you ask? What happened to that little baby doll at the end of the film?
Well, get ready to say bye-bye to any form of common sense whatsoever in the next movie. But until then, I'm Fedora, this is Oh the Horror. Save a screen from me, we'll see you next time.